Good afternoon, while we get the technology sorted. So firstly, an absolute privilege to be addressing you today, and I'm extremely conscious that I'm standing between you and lunch, so please be gentle with me.
Thank you.
So firstly, really a privilege to chat to you today, and before getting into the Transnet and the opportunity that has come there from a partnership perspective, and I'll certainly speak into what Dr. Wright spoke of earlier on. A comment from my previous hat as the security lead at Unilever, and it was really good to meet Lauren here today, my successor as the Africa lead at Unilever. Very interesting that in the past 5, 6, 7 years, we've seen a significant shift in the complexity, frequency, and impact that security risk is posing to supply chain logistics, both on inward bound, whether that be raw material if you're in a manufacturing environment, and then on outward bound logistics. And we saw that threat has become ever increasing in two sort of areas. The one is insider threat, so where people within your own organization or very closely contracted persons within your organization work in syndicated manner to really manipulate your systems and your primary security, financial and operational controls to get truckloads off of your sites, or to deplete half of your inbound logistics, which is scary. And then on the other hand, the macro environment, and where security and the mitigation of the threats on that logistics actually becomes a business enabler. I take Ethiopia, for example, where we had quite a complicated security control room, digital mapping, and working directly with logistics, because there you would find a logistics route that is green now, in 4 hours' time goes red, and you can reroute or hold trucks, stop, go, and you actually find sales teams starting to build into the sales forecasts elements to deal with the efficiencies of the security mitigations. So it's really interesting stuff. I don't think the threat to the security threat to logistics is ever going to rescind to where it was. I think from here it just gets tougher, and collectively as businesses we need to absolutely see it, own it, and try to get ahead of the curve. Anyway, that's the past. So when I speak to you today about Transnet, the first thing is I'm going to say that critical logistics infrastructure in any country poses significant benefits to the overall growth of GDP and economic well-being of the country. I think you saw this morning Dr. Wright was speaking of about a 3.5% GDP that could be realized just if we got rail and road logistics sorted in South Africa. I'll argue that by the same token, if not maintained, kept and looked after, such infrastructure poses as big a risk to GDP and economic well-being of a country. So when I look back to our first interventions in Transnet, from an Anglo perspective, and I hope this is going to work. There we go. So we, for the first time, saw quite a serious blimp on the iron ore corridor, which is in Northern Cape. Now, iron ore is quite serious because there is no financial alternative to the haulage. You cannot haul iron ore on a financially viable basis by any road means. So it's train or it's nothing. And our iron ore business unit suffered significantly when for the first time that entire line went down for several days due to significant overhead copper cable theft. At that stage, in the absence of immediate state response, we decided to step in from the mining perspective because over time, and given the complexity of security risks facing mining, both internal and external, we've developed fair capacity from a security perspective. We immediately engaged Transnet and partnered with them in that moment. And within a very short space of time, we got a short-term intervention going, and successfully so. Things then went on, and we suddenly saw a change. Transnet did change its security approach to lines, but I think there are far more complex things at play. And from about June, July last year, we saw a massive increase with horrendous impact on what we term the Northern Corridor. So the Northern Corridor is responsible or carries all chrome and coal ore from most of the country through to Richards Bay. And effectively, we suddenly saw very serious, orchestrated, syndicated attacks. Now the difference is, and this is where the complexity comes in, on the iron ore line, it's only copper and copper syndicates. The minute you speak chrome and coal, you're speaking logistics mafia as well as copper, which makes it very difficult. I yesterday read an interesting Daily Maverick article that was, I think, came out on the 3rd of March or something, on Richards Bay and how they say that it's under siege from the haulage mafia, over 1,000 coal trucks a day, for the simple reason that there's so many less trains running. And we then saw this major impact happening, and it required a response. So from an industry perspective, and yeah, I'm saying not Anglo, from an industry perspective, because on the Northern Corridor, where we suddenly saw this explosion of assault on the infrastructure, on a certain part from Hackart down, the coal industry came together and operationalized an intervention concept. In our space, we also engaged Transnet, and at that stage, what had started out as the NLCC, Workstream 7, under the pillar on logistics that Dr. Wright spoke to about this morning. And we came up with a tactical intervention approach to create a short-term remedy or short-term solution to what we were seeing. Now, if you ask what the situation was at that time, I mean, by August, we had almost no chrome trains running. The situation was such that by 31 October, we would have had to stop producing chrome at big impact to jobs and livelihoods because we just couldn't haul enough of it with trucks on the road. I'm sure you would have heard in the news that the coal industry was talking about retrenching 30,000 staff because they simply couldn't haul the coal. And this is where quite a strong partnership journey evolved. And if you see the center picture, you can actually, I hope it's clear enough, but you can see the overhead copper which is being taken. So a strand in Transnet terms would be about 70 meters, and you would find armed syndicates. So the syndicate would have people cutting the copper, and then we suspect foreign national military people supporting them, well armed. There have been several very serious shootout engagements, protecting them while they cut the copper. And they could take, in a single incident, up to 10, 15, 20 spans. Now, to repair that would take Transnet probably over a week. And in that time, no empty trains move back to where they need to be replenished, and no full loads can move down. So the task upon us then, the operational concept we saw, and this is a concept which is followed internationally when it comes to syndicated crime. It was really about being able to put together and drive and support a partnership approach to sort of 4 key areas. The first one is disruption, so short-term disruption to regain control of the lines. Create the opportunity to develop intelligence, and Dr. Wright would have alluded to this because this applies to any sort of infrastructural issues. Allow that window of opportunity to get far better investigations going, and then ultimately the criminal justice system. How do we get this through to effective prosecutions and clear messaging going out in terms of decent sentences? And you can see there that there's a role for the private industry to play a role, and this is where industry has stepped in. And I'll consistently be saying that I believe that we are absolutely creating the window of opportunity for the medium and the long-term solutions to kick in. The operational concept was effectively to use specialist tactical, specialist technology, and then specialist investigative, specialist intelligence, and specialist prosecutors to deliver an end-to-end solution. And a couple of pictures there just to give an indication and visualize what we're speaking of, because there's a strategic element to this and there's a tactical element, and we all need to know where we need to be doing a role to collectively solve what is a country-critical issue. The fact that the President himself has instructed and is keeping a hands-on approach to a National Logistics Crisis Committee, I think speaks to the level of severity that this is impacting the country with. So you see your tactical police in the middle there. In our case, tactical mine and tactical private security across the industry, which the industry is providing. And then you can see on the right-hand side, I know for a fact the right-hand side one was on the iron ore corridor in very early days. So using extremely sophisticated drone equipment with the best of thermal imaging available to drive these tactical operations. In the meantime, we then look at the short, the medium, and the long term. So I said to you now that what we were trying to do is create this window of opportunity, try and urgently regain a control, but that cannot be the long-lasting solution. So in our minds, and I can assure you, the partnership at the NLCC is really going. It's one of the first I've seen. I have a policing background, and it's one of the first ones I'm seeing where, I think it was Lawrence point earlier, in terms of accountability, for the first time you're seeing a committee where they've allowed private entities to be present. Previously it was only state and intelligence agencies that could sit there. That's already a big forward movement. Somebody asked about policy and conflict earlier. The second one is that whether it be Transnet, whether it be industry, whether it be SAPS, whether it be intelligence or anyone who is assigned taskings or a timeline is being held accountable. We are meeting weekly and you're giving account to what needed to be delivered. Could the pace be faster? We certainly believe so. But I think as industry, we're doing our bit to, on one hand, support, but on the other hand, keep driving that sense check and that accountability. So in our view, and I think we're very aligned with the state agencies and the SOEs in this space, and we're talking specifically rail here, is that in the short term, it's reduce the incidents, start getting the line stable, enable some solid investigations, and get a model. What is the model that works? And this is where we're focusing on the northern corridor because that is significant. There's still the container corridor, there's the Cape corridor, all of them being hammered, but this was the most critical one, and this is where we're sort of using it to pilot this model that works. The medium term is to start looking, where do you roll that model out to? How do you start getting to a more sustained model? And how do we really develop the specialist capabilities within state intelligence, state investigations, and the criminal justice system? And then down the line, in the long term, is really where you can spread the model on a far more sustainable model across all impacted rail infrastructure, and very importantly, truly address the logistics mafia and the copper cable mafia, which are significant in South Africa currently and causing our country significant harm. Partnerships, and I'm going to push through to the end because I am conscious of time. Partnerships is the way to go. The previous speaker, the question that was asked, and I thought I'll just save it for now. Any brilliance we have is only going to be as good as it is because there are so many pockets of brilliance. There is technology, there is tactical, there is artificial intelligence, and the whole digital agenda. Success comes when we can marry that up in partnerships that are actually functional. Technology, and I'll speak to that on a picture just now. Technology, as much as we think it does away with people, it doesn't. At the end of the day, it can be preventative, deterrent, but people catch people. Criminal is confronted by a guy with a gun, in South Africa in any case. And it's how we bring this all together. So the partnership policing model you're seeing there is it's used across the world, and there are many of them. But I think where we have this opportunity, and I think Dr. Wright was alluding to that today. Remember, I'm speaking in the NLCC and one pillar of 3 that are currently underway. And I think there is this massive window opportunity where for the first time we're actually seeing state accountability being driven, serious drive and partnership from the private sector, and acceptance of responsibility and being made aware consistently of the onus of responsibility within the SOE, in this case, for example, Transnet. And that's very important. If any of this fails, I think concerns for me is where the beneficiary, whether that be Eskom, whether that be Transnet, starts moving towards a parasitic relationship, where the owner says, oh, well, mines will look after it, or industry will look after it. And that is the one aspect we'd need to guard against. But I think, and I certainly hope, these structures that have been established will be going far longer than another year or two, because I think it's a paradigm shift in our country and where partnerships can absolutely forge the future, specifically in our infrastructure and the threat to logistics. While I move on, I want to say that what is happening in the rail space, remember the NLCC is with all logistics. We're going to see a very similar focus, I'm confident thereof, in terms of road freight cargo. And that is where so many questions of today are going to be able to feed in, and when you start becoming aware of it, jump in, bring your, even if it is a patty, bring whatever it is you can bring to that braai, because it's our opportunity. You know, we can sit back as industry and criticize the state and criticize SAPS and criticize Eskom, but it's our businesses in our country that's going down. Or we can roll up our sleeves, step to the table, bring our patty, but do it so in a manner where we drive accountability consistently. To visualize the tactical side of this, the operations, that is the model that we're doing. That is, for example, a single team, and we are covering at the moment probably about 180 kilometers of rail. But we're using extremely effective drones. That drone there has probably a 10-kilometer comfortable radius with an hour-and-a-half flying time. It's called a VTOL, so vertical takeoff and land, but once it's up, it transitions to a single motor front. And the camera technology on there is exceptional. You just don't hide from it. You will see in the last slide what's happened in terms of the span reductions. So you still have incidents, but there's no more 10, 15. I think the longest they've taken now under our watch is probably about 2 spans. And this is what industry is providing right through. It's the drone and then your strong tactical people. Why such tactical people? Because we're up against military-trained, military or paramilitary equipped type protectors or security that are accompanying, whether it be the guys who just shoot up the railroads, because we see that. You'll get people who cut the overheads, or they'll just walk into a station, shoot up the officers, damage locomotives, because they want the trucks on the road. They have no interest in the copper. And this is working well. And back to the old cliche. So that drone without tactical is utterly unimpactful. The copper cable thieves or the guys will shoot up the railroad station and watch the drone and wave. Without the drone, those few tactical people are not going to cover more than 5 or 8 Ks of line, because they just can't do it. They're trying to look and find. Combine the two and you get the best of both worlds, alongside other technology. So that's a visualization of what is out there at the moment. And again, I want to emphasize, and we're getting really near the end now, we really are providing a short-term intervention. I'm confident it's creating that window of opportunity for business and state in these committees to start driving the next levels. Good intelligence infrastructure, trained investigators, maybe even courts specific for infrastructure crime, etc., etc. And we move then hopefully to a position where we stabilize this. And if this model, if we get this right across rail in South Africa, then the question would be, so with the same effort, why could you not get it going across the road corridors, and then Eskom infrastructure or municipal electric infrastructure, for example? At the end of the tunnel, and this fortunately is my last slide, if you take a look at what happened last year in terms of incidents and spans, so you can see what happened, and then our intervention came, and it looks very much the same on the coal corridor. This is an industry-driven support piece alongside partnership. It is partnership, 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 and SAPS, everybody are absolutely getting on board, but they just needed that period when we could create a bit of calm to give the rest a chance to work. So the spans at the bottom is the most important part, because as I said, as of the past 2-3 months, we see that they simply cannot get away with more than a span. So you're talking 2 hours downtime, 3 hours downtime, and we've regained a bit of an initiative. So I think that from our side is where we are. It's been a privilege to be able to intervene and to, for the first time, see state or public-private partnerships being taken this seriously, and that you hear a police general saying to Transnet or Eskom, for example, okay, so how many trains are running because of security and how many because of inefficient planning, and hold you accountable to that. Now that is good to hear. So I will implore all of you, and one of the other speakers said as well, roll up your sleeves, let's get stuck in and make the difference we can be. There are pockets of excellence across the dynamics of private and public sector institutions. Let's do our bit to be the best we can be. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. That's very interesting. From my side, one of the things that came out from all the speakers this morning was the involvement that you eventually get from state entities. How important is that now? How much do you think that will make a difference?
I think it's extremely important because it forges, I think that's extremely important because if it doesn't, you absolutely run that risk of taking over responsibilities, and that is simply not sustainable. So SAPs need to do what SAPs need to do, and the military and intelligence. Transnet or Eskom or metros need to own their spaces, but I think that's what's imperative. These organs that have been established now, we see it physically working. They are dedicating resources. They are starting to put a focus. There certainly is light at the end of the tunnel, forgive the pun.
That's absolutely awesome to hear. Is there any more questions from the audience? We have there on that side. Thanks, Thorsten, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Wayne, thanks so much. I think it's a really, really powerful presentation. And I guess you didn't sleep in August, September, and October last year. My question is, I mean, this is criminal enterprises, and you're basically disrupting highly profitable criminal enterprise. Have you seen a displacement of crime, and has it shifted to either senior managers within the risk departments or even ExCo members being targeted, threats being made? Has there been a shift?
So that's a really good question. And you know, it was on one of my slides, and I slipped on that one. One of the success factors for what you see over there is we've put a lot of emphasis on the analysis of incident data. And to have a look whether you're disrupting or displacing, there's a big difference. Because if I'm stopping on this piece and they move 100 kilometers up, it's about totally disrupting. Now what we do is constantly de-risk. So it's faceless. We are never saying that person or that rail manager. In fact, local station managers, etc., we keep way away from engagements because assassinations, I think we've seen 4 or 5 in the past 3 or 4 weeks across industries. I know of 2 mine managers, the Fosco individual, another procurement person. It's a reality of life, and it's been raised to. So to your point, the constant narrative is this is a NLCC, this is a organizational, we are taking, there's never a face to the operation. And as difficult that is because we do have insider threat who leak that, so we are conscious, and you need to then undertake internal risk assessments consistently on individuals. I hope I've answered your question, but certainly the risk factor here is significant. Yeah. Thanks.
Wayne, are you going to be available after this?
Probably for about an hour, yes.
For about an hour, Wayne will be available. We're going to break now for lunch. The lunch will start right now. We actually caught up quite a bit on the timing there. Lunch will be until
2:15.
2:15. Can I please ask everybody by 2:15 if we can meet back in here? I'll appreciate it so much. Thank you very much. Enjoy the lunch.
Thank you.